we are doing upgrades, and I'm going to show you how to install this SlatSolution slat wall, right? So this is the wooden slats on the black felt that gives you both a really good look and some nice acoustic treatment properties. Now, it's not the same as having big diffusers or big absorbers, but it's better than a solid wall, and man, it looks really, really good. Now, this appears to be easy, but there are a lot of things, a lot of steps that go into installing this, and that's what I want to talk about, because I watched a lot of videos and they didn't give me the information that I really needed to get this stuff installed correctly. So in this video, I'm going to cover off on the important topics that you need to know to really have a good result when you install this yourself. Now, first off, we're going to talk about the tools, right? What you need to actually cut this stuff and get it on the wall. We're going to talk about the materials themselves a little bit and how to handle them and how to check them out when they ship. I'm going to show you how to do the cuts, and there are two major cuts. This is the cut across the bottom or the top for the height, and then how do you do those plunge cuts to cut out around outlets? That's the difficult stuff, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about then mounting this to the wall. There are two different ways to do this. I took the easy way, but there's a easier way even, but it's more permanent, and we'll talk about both of those. How to deal with corners, right? So where the slat wall meets an adjoining corner, what do you do, right? And I've seen some videos that make this super duper hard to deal with. Well, for us, it's going to be easy. I'm going to show you how to do it the easy way as well. And finally, we're going to talk about how to finish this to look nicely, right? So this is really how to deal with the cuts around outlets, because if you're like me, your cuts will be okay, but man, they're not going to be perfect and it's not going to look super good. And when you install this stuff, you want it to look super good. I talked to my son, Drake, the producer, and he came up with an outstanding way to make those cuts look really, really good. It's all about the finished carpentry on this wall, and you do need a little bit of that to make this wall look its absolute best. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, because there's going to be a lot more content featuring this wall, and then the replacement of this TV with the 97-inch TCL, and then just the general refurbishment of this theater. It's really cool, so stick around for that. But first, we're going to go ahead and jump into the tools, what you need to get this thing going.
Before we get started, if you're into tech, hi-fi, or movies, be sure to push the subscribe button for new weekly videos.
One thing that you're going to have to bring to the table is a set of tools to get this job done. So we're out in my workshop, which is really just the two-car garage on the front of the house, right? I wish I had an external attached or detached workshop. That'd be cool. But even in a space like this, you'll have all the room that you need to do this project, right? You don't need a lot of space for it. But the tools that you need, there are a number of them if you want to do this easily. First off, you're going to need some type of table or sawhorses, and this is going to help you as you're doing the cuts on these big long pieces. You'll need them supported somehow so that you're going to cut. I'm going to kind of just work left to right on this table and go through everything. So you'll need a tape measure for measurements, some type of pencil to make marks. You'll need a utility razor knife so that you can cut the felt from time to time. That becomes very important. You'll need a large level, at least a 2-foot level, to do the job. And I used a number of different squares and straight edges to help make cut marks, right? So I have a, what is this, a 48-inch, 4-foot straight edge. I have a rather large square. And then I think this is what's called a speed square, a little one with the edge on the bottom. So those were the devices that I used to keep all my cuts at the correct angle. I did use a flashlight from time to time because my 51-year-old eyes can't see anything anymore. So extra light was super helpful. A set of pliers will be needed if you're going to have to remove the staples from the back of the felt to remove a piece of wood. Hopefully your cuts don't end up that way, but if they do, it's no big deal. A pair of pliers will get those staples out, and those slats will come off quite easily. Then for the power tools, there were 3 power tools that I used. A skill saw, right? And if you have a skill saw with a guide so you can make super straight cuts, that's going to be even better. I didn't, so I just freehanded everything, and it worked out just fine. A screwdriver so that you can attach the screws, and what I am not showing here is the box of drywall screws. So I used black drywall screws. I also used painter's tape, and you'll see that in the section of the video where I show how to do the cuts. It really makes a huge difference for splintering and those kinds of issues if you tape all this stuff down. And then the last one is, I don't even know what this tool is called, but you put the little blade on here and the blade goes left and right. I think it actually just goes a few degrees left and right, and you can make plunge cuts with it. You'll see it in the video, but this is very important when you want to cut out for outlets and that kind of stuff. All right. So that's the set of tools that you need. If you're not a big carpenter, maybe you've got a buddy you can borrow this stuff from. For me, over the years, I've just accumulated these things. The one item that I think might be out of the ordinary for folks is this blade. And you can accomplish that in other ways if you want to, but for me, I had already invested in this and it made a big difference in just being able to jump through those pieces really quickly and make those cuts. But those are the tools that you need. So now let's move on. Here we are in the garage with the SlatSolutions delivery, and I just wanted to put this into scale for you so you can kind of understand what you're going to be getting yourself into, right? So this stuff is big, right? So obviously it goes from floor to ceiling, right? But I don't know if the impact really gets you until you have it in person. This stuff is humongous. Now, another thing is that this is immensely heavy, especially when you have, oh gosh, I think this is 9 sheets of the 2-foot wide acoustic paneling. Is super duper extra super duper heavy, right? So be ready for that as well. This is now parked in the garage, and well, it's not going anywhere except piece by piece down to the basement after it gets cut for installation. It's just that heavy. We actually tried to put this on furniture rollers and it destroyed them. It broke the furniture rollers because it was so heavy. So this, once you get it parked, unless you are superhuman, it's probably not going anywhere.
We've got our tools, we've got our materials, and now it's time to get the work area ready. And really this is just clearing space around the wall. So move all your furniture away, get everything off the wall, leave yourself a good 4 feet in front of the wall so you can lay the panels down, walk around, move, that kind of thing. And then there's one thing that you might want to do, right? So if you're going to have a lot of outlets and you're going to be making a lot of cuts to expose those, and we had a lot, 5, 6, 7 of those that we had to deal with, we decided to go ahead and pull the plates off and then paint around them with the blackest paint we could get our hands on. And this is just because there's no way you're going to cut all of this stuff exactly perfect, right? So you are going to see some of the existing wall color between the cuts that you make in the slat wall and the actual outlet covers themselves. And since we're trying to go for that darker motif, we wanted it all to be black. We went and bought some peppercorn black. That's that's the one. That's the color. And we taped off and painted around all of the different outlets on the walls. Now, is it necessary to tape it and do that stuff? Not really. You could just pull the plates off and then slap some paint around it and just make it larger than you think you would cut a hole. And you need to only go out maybe 2 or 3 inches around each of the outlets, and that will get you in a spot where you don't have to be perfect with your cuts, and it'll still end up looking pretty darn good. Now let's talk measurements and cuts. So the measurements for this is pretty straightforward, and I think most of us are going to be okay with a tape measure. And for me, since I was using solid pieces, meaning that I didn't have to like cut stuff in half or, there's like some kind of spacer in between, anything odd, it was really straightforward. So I would just measure on each side of where I felt the 2 feet would take me, right? So on the left side, right side, and then I would pick the smaller of the 2 measurements because, the walls are never exactly level. At least in this basement, it was pretty wonky. And you don't want to have it too tall on one end and too short on the other. Anyway, that's how I did the measurements. And then it came time for the cuts, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But you will also have to measure for outlets, and this is the most difficult piece, right? Because you need to identify where this outlet is going to fall and then cut that piece out of the tall piece of slat. And I just did that by figuring out, distance from the bottom of a piece to the bottom start of a outlet hole to the top, and then from the left to the closest side and then to the further side. And then I just measured it out and used the square to make it all square, drew lines, and then cut. All right, so now let's talk about the specifics of actually cutting. On the screen, you can see the final setup for our standard methodology for cutting this stuff. So, we'd put on painter's tape and get it down into all of the nooks and crannies. And then we would also cover up the the piece that was not being cut off with some type of material to try and keep the sawdust off of it, because I discovered that the sawdust, when it got into this felt, it's really hard to get out, right? It turns it brown, and it's a pain in the butt to turn it black again. So we taped this stuff off. We put on some protective material to kind of keep the dust off of the stuff going on the wall. Got the line marked, and then we just run across it with a skill saw. I often would have my son hold a flashlight so I could see things a little bit more clearly, but all in all, it's pretty straightforward to get those big cuts done. Now let's talk about the cutouts for utility plates, right? So this is for power or network or anything else coming out of the wall that's going to have a plate cover there. So for me, the two tools that worked out really here was the oscillating multi-tool. I looked up what it's called, and just a razor knife. And I found that if I could just not cut vertically through the slats, it made life a lot easier. So what I tried to do is, for all of the vertical cuts, just follow one of the slats, cutting the felt only. And then for the horizontal cut where you had to go across the wood, I would then use that oscillating multi-tool to cut that out. And that made the cuts a lot easier and a lot better looking. Now, they're not gonna look super perfect still, but we'll cover off later in the video of how to make those look really, really nice. But using that strategy made these cuts pretty straightforward if you measured correctly. But remember, measure twice, cut once.
When you've got a piece cut, let's talk a little bit about the mounting. And the way that I like to mount this stuff to the wall is, obviously I'm doing this in a vertical orientation, and I like to have the top lip. So if you look at each side, there's going to be a section that ends with a piece of wood with a notch under it, and then the other side will end with the felt sticking out. So I like to have the piece of the felt sticking out going to the right, and that's going to butt up against a corner, and we'll talk about the corners in a bit. And then the raised wooden piece is going to form a lip on the left-hand side. And what that will allow you to do is, when you bring your next piece in, you can slide that next piece under that piece of wood, and it'll help you keep that steady. And if you're doing this alone, that's a huge benefit. Now, if you've got a friend, not necessarily as big a deal, but alone, it really helps you get this stuff up on the wall. Now, to actually attach this to the wall, there are two different methods that I think are the best ones. And the second method really is in combination with the first. So the first method is really just between the slats in the felt, just use drywall screws and then screw this straight into the wall. And the way I did it is I did a screw 3 inches from the top, 3 inches from the bottom, and then about halfway through. I went actually a little bit lower than halfway on mine. And then I allowed 2 felt stripes in between each of the screws. And for me, that gave a nice tight fit on the wall. The second method of attaching the SlatSolution slat wall to the wall is to still use the screws, but use some construction adhesive on the back of the panels themselves. Now, this will make this installation pretty much permanent, because when you pull these things down with that adhesive, whatever finish there is behind this is going to bring some of that material down as well. You know, I wanted to be able to pull this stuff off and not take down the finish behind, and that's why I just use screws myself. But I think the better method, and my recommended method, is to use that construction adhesive as well. Not that you're going to have resonance with the felt touching the wall, that's going to be nice, but it will make that have a tighter seal and maybe less headaches and less worries down the line, because you know it's never coming down until you rip it down. Now let's talk about how we start the installation with what I call the starting corner. So this is going to be the side that you build from, and I build from the right-hand side as you're facing the wall to the left. And I take the existing felt edge that's part of the slat wall, and that's what butts up against this far corner, right? So I'm not cutting that off and taking wood all the way up. I'm using that edge. And the thing that you want to do here is like I said, best with 2 people for this piece and for all the pieces of this installation. But you'll get your level, you will have this cut to size, you'll slide this up, and then you want to then shimmy the top or bottom to give you a vertical level, and then you'll butt this felt up against the wall as hard as you can. Now, if your wall on this side is not level, what you can do is you can come back and you can cut this felt. So, you know, if you're tilting in or out, you can cut a little bit off so that you can get a good nice push against this so that your slats are vertical, and then the felt fills in this entire gap. So that is a wonderful, easy way to get this started and have the black continue all the way to the edge, but not have to cut any wood. Now, the other piece that you need to be careful about is the ending edge. So remember, I'm building from right to left, and at the end, you might run into a piece where you're actually in a slat. And that's what happened to me, right? So if you look closely, you can see that the felt extends out into where a slat should have been. Now, what you don't want to do is try to start cutting through the middle of a slat against your end wall, because that's going to look horrible. The easy way to do this is these slats are all attached with staples through the back of the felt. Simply remove your last slat and then cut that felt to the point where it butts up against the end wall. And that will give you a beautiful finished seam. It extends the black all the way through with the same material, so you're not trying to paint edges or anything like that. A really nice look. This is the most challenging aspect of installing slat wall from any provider, whether it's SlatSolution or any other, and that's the cuts around your outlets. There are lots of different strategies to handle this, but I didn't have a good one when I got started with this, so I just did my best to start. So I simply cut out around where the plugs would be in any way that I could. So I ended up cutting through the middle of some of the slats to do this, and then on others, I just cut to the edge of the felt so that I didn't have half a slat available. But as you can see, this looks absolutely horrible, and I was very dissatisfied with the end result here. So not knowing what to do and not really seeing a good solution online on any of the other videos, I went to Drake, the producer, and I said, dude, help, what can I do? He came up with a really great solution that makes this look nice, and he's gonna tell you all about it now.
In order to make the cuts in the slat wall look nice, we decided to make our own trim plates, which look like these. To build them, we first designed them on Tinkercad, a free 3D design software. After that, we printed them at home on our 3D printer. This is Tinkercad, and this is one of the wall plates we designed. You can use Tinkercad to design any of the trim plates that you need for your installation.
Now let's talk about the end result of the items that Drake put together. And so those are these trim pieces, and we're going to install these. Now what I would suggest doing is that for these, get a little bit of earthquake putty, and you can put on the inside of these to keep them in. I'm just going to use friction force to insert them, but you can see the difference this makes immediately. I mean, this goes from a very unattractive situation to what I consider to be pretty darn good looking, right? Now, one thing to keep in mind too is as you do this, on the inside of this, you might want to put a little black trim paint, which you saw us do in the wall prep for this. And then this is the insert panel that he created for this section here, and that'll be held in with screws since it's larger. But that strategy, using the 3D printer to create these custom forms, really makes a huge difference in the look of this wall. Now, if you need some of these for your own project, you can do these in Tinkercad like Drake showed you. Now, if you want some of these pre-made, drop me a note and we can figure that out. We'd be happy to whip some of these up for you, print them, and send them your way for a nominal cost. But this is really a really good strategy for this slat wall and any slat wall to really make these cuts look good when you don't necessarily have the most perfect of cuts. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of the SlatSolution install tutorial. I want to again thank SlatSolution for helping out with that materials for this project, and I want to encourage all of you to hit that subscribe button, because this is just one step in this larger room renovation, and I really can't wait till I get the TCL 97-inch, the mount, and all that stuff going, and then integration of that with the Trinov and all of the other outstanding home theater pieces we have in this room. And I think this is doubly important because this is an example of how most any homeowner can retrofit an existing room to be a very functional and immersive theater that looks great using items such as this SlatSolution slat wall. All right, again, down below there's going to be another video. Give that one a shot. I think you'll like it. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll see you all in the next video.